Hey everybody, my name is Makon Jovu and I am delighted to be live with you with a very special guest. You can see him right there, the living legend, the icon, Dr. John Kanye. Dr. Kanye, how you doing this morning?
Very, very fine. I'm happy to be with you.
Oh, we are delighted. We are honored. We are really excited that you're here. Now, guys, thank you so much for joining. This is going to be a live and dynamic conversation. Drop your comments in the chat. I'll be reading them live. I want to hear what you're thinking. I want to know what you're thinking about this conversation. So definitely drop in those comments. So now listen, I know who this living legend is, but in case you've been under a rock for the past however many years, let me read a brief bio here just so you guys can get familiar. Okay, so Dr. John Kanye is a South African actor, director, playwright, known for both his writing and his dramatic performances. One of the world's greatest actors and a personal fave of mine. Dr. Kanye's extraordinary career has led to countless awards, honors, including honorary doctorates from universities. He was born in New Brighton, Eastern Cape in South Africa. Mr. Kanye's impact has been felt all over the globe, appearing on several TV programs and stage plays. You might have seen the Tony Award-winning actor in the Marvel Studios films Captain America, Civil War, and of course, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, and also the 2019 remake of The Lion King. Now, recently, Dr. Kanye has been honored with the highly acclaimed Pragnell Shakespeare Award for his original play, which he wrote, by the way, Kunene and the King. Have you ever heard Xhosa? Have you ever heard Shakespeare in Xhosa? Okay. We got to make sure that we actually go and see that play when it comes back to the stages. Dr. Kanye, it is a pleasure to have you here with us. Where are you broadcasting from?
Oh, from home in Johannesburg, in my house. I've just sent my granddaughter and my son to go away and go look at other things so that I could have this moment with you. Yes, I'm home in South Africa.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I I hope they're having a good time wherever they are and they're watching as well and supporting. So, I mean, we have to talk about the elephant in the room. I got to know how you've been coping. Given that we've had this worldwide pandemic and as a practitioner of the arts, how has that affected you?
Well, we transferred in the beginning of 2020 to the West End through the success of Kunene and the King. We were scheduled for about a 6 months run. And at the end of 3 months, and suddenly the pandemic hit the UK, that is London. We were waiting and to know what's going to happen. And finally, on the 30th of March, 2020, the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, announced that all uh, um, cultural activities would be considered super spreaders. So theaters were closed, cinemas, rugby, football, and all other gatherings. So I was lucky to catch the last flight out of London back to South Africa, Johannesburg. And since then, the COVID-19 has had a devastating impact on the creative arts. We depend on people coming from all over South Africa, from all over the world, to come to the theaters to share our experiences with the stories we tell. And then there's also the hospitality industry. Hotels were closed, tourism was hit hard, which then had a serious impact on our work. So many, many actors are really struggling. Although we are sort of in a very small scale of using two-handers at the Market Theatre, which I must say, congratulations, 45 years
Wow.
in this month. We opened 3 days after the June uprising. On the 19th, we opened the Market Theatre with South Africa on flames. And yet people would riot and toy and throw stones and in the evening come and see a play at the Market Theatre.
Wow.
So we're celebrating that 45 years of incredible history and the role of the arts.
Yes.
You know, it's important that people understand the role of the arts.
Let's talk about that for a second. So let's start at the very beginning. I'm glad that you brought that up. The role of the arts is so important within the framework of society. But when you were first starting out, how did you realize that your work was having an impact?
Well, as young people in New Brighton, Port Elizabeth, we were being prepared to leave the country very quietly. We didn't tell the parents. We were going to go outside South Africa join the Mkhonto with Caesar, the military wing of the African National Congress,
Right.
come back with our AK-47s and liberate South Africa. It was exactly at that time that I was invited into a rehearsal of the play Antigone by certain players. And I stood there, an angry young black man who really wanted to be part of the liberation movement. You know, at that stage, we had already been detained. My uncle was already on Robben Island. My younger brother was serving 2 years in some penitentiary around South Africa. And I stood inside that room listening to the director and the actors dissect this Greek play over 2,000 years, Antigone by Sophocles, and asked the question, if the law is unjust, do the citizen have a right to fight that law?
Yeah.
And that was it. I knew that moment, this is the vehicle I am going to use to use it as a method, a mechanism of spreading the flame of freedom at a time when our people were suffering what I call collective amnesia. There was a conspiracy of silence. People knew Nelson Mandela was on Robben Island, Walter Sisulu was on Robben Island. People knew people were leaving the country in droves. Young people were walking the streets without education, but nobody wanted to say anything about it. It nearly become a new normal. Mark my words, new normal. That South Africa, black people are an oppressed people. You know, my mom was also saying, my child, like God chose Moses, he will get us out of Egypt. I said, Mom, we are all Moses. That's the challenge. We are all Moses. It was then that I realized not only is the pen mightier than the sword, but the word, the theater, art was like a reflecting surface, which you point at the audience, at the society, and they can see the need to be heard. That's how I realized this thing is not that bad. It's going to pay later, but at the moment, it serves the purpose of keeping the flame of the struggle alive in our people.
100%. And I love what you said, the conversation with you, Lomama. You were saying that, you know, we're not all Moses, not all of us are selected to be at the forefront. How do we inspire the younger generation, perhaps that didn't live through apartheid, right? Batingama born freeze, the born freeze. How do we inspire them if they perhaps feel disconnected and they have a platform? How do we get them sort of invested in moving the needle forward?
If you're Black, you're an African on the continent or in the diaspora, you're never born free. You inherit in your veins the struggles, the aspirations, the frustrations of your great-great-grandparents. A wonderful man said to me, Harry Belafonte, he said, people never spoke about slavery because they didn't want to pass on that baggage to the next generation. But we were surprised to know that the young generation knew about it. My grandchildren are angry at the life I had to go through in order for them to be the so-called born frees. My sons are asking, how did this happen? Why didn't you do something? So the conversation within an African home always will refer to the challenges of the continent and Africans in the diaspora. I'm not going to talk about the Black Lives Matter. They've always mattered in Africa for the rest of their lives. So when we talk about this African American civil rights movement moving into the present affirmative action, moving to the present Black Lives Matter, and all that constant conversation. They cannot have an excuse as a young person and say, I don't know. I did not know. There's no way.
There's no way, not with the living history that's here, not the way that it's been documented. I love that you brought up the point about, you know, the parallels of the struggle between Black people in America and what you've experienced in South Africa. And in my eyes, Dr. John Kanye, I was born in Zimbabwe, right? I've lived in America for over 30 something years, right? And I find that there's still a lot of work that can be done to get that solidarity between Black people here in the US and people back home. How do you think we begin to either have those conversations or have us work in tandem together?
We heard that in the late 80s, together with Alfred Woodard, people like Quincy Jones, people like Danny Glover, we formed Artists Against Apartheid. And they worked to conscientize and mobilize African Americans, Americans as a whole within the arts industry, film, television, and all, to begin to have a voice in support of their Black brothers and sisters in South Africa. People stepped out and talked about cultural boycott. People refused their works to be sent to South Africa on their own. Those inputs began to crack that granite wall of apartheid, began to be the fuel of our resistance. When we talk about it now, we say, yes, whenever the African on the continent has a problem, it should reverberate absolutely across the world where the other section of the African diaspora community. The reason, even now, I said to somebody, what can we do? And I said, very simple. Take the lesson from the Jewish community. What impacts on Israel is their own problem, and it is personal. Yeah. Therefore, the African American must know what happens in Africa is personal to them. It's no longer generally across the Atlantic, it's personal. And they need to ask the next candidate for Congress, for city, for everything, what is your policy on Africa? The same way you cannot be elected to the White House if you don't have a clear policy for Israel. If you're in Europe, Macron had just visited South Africa, and we were talking about that. Right. I said those Africans that are crossing the Mediterranean, going to die on that sea, trying to cross into what opportunities in Europe and in England. No, sweetheart, they're not lost. They're following their wealth, which was siphoned out of Africa. They're following the money that was taken out of this continent and built the palaces, the roads, and the wealth of all the great European mighty empires. Now, therefore, when they cross the Atlantic, they're just following their money.
That's right. That's right, Dr. Kanye. And I love the story that you told. I mean, I hope you guys are picking up on these gems in the chat. This dynamic conversation we're having, if you're just joining with Dr. John Kanye. I love the story that you told on a very related note about the time when you were held in solitary confinement, right? You've been using arts as vehicles for your activism for a long time. It was a time that you were in solitary confinement for over, I think it was over 20 days or something like that. And while you were there, you received a note that let you know that people all over the world, right, were actually out and protesting on your behalf. So I think that speaks to the global solidarity. How much did that mean to you in that moment to see people on your behalf galvanizing to speak out, to say, no, this man shouldn't be in prison?
When you were detained in the 70s and the 80s, you had 40% chance of walking out alive. That we knew. The community knew. Your parents, your friends knew. Once you're detained, we may never hear about you again. There may even be false information that you actually escaped and left the country. And yet later, during the Truth and Reconciliation, we found the bones of people we thought had escaped to exile. So sitting there, being arrested with Winston Jonah from the stage as we took the curtain call, grabbed us like this. The audience came forward to protect us. Guns were drawn out. The audience back, bundled into the car, drove about 80 miles in the middle of the night. I knew this was it. I just had this calm in me that this was okay. It was okay. You joined the struggle. You join it because you want to live. Also, you expect to die. When I was in that solitary confinement, I knew nobody knew where we were, because that was how good the apartheid system was. If you're arrested in New York, you'll be detained in Atlanta. So the rest of your family will be trying to get hold where you are to get legal assistance. Nobody knows where actually you are. And when you were tried, you'll be tried in LA, so that there can be no legal representation. And one day, I think it was the 20th day, sitting in my solitary confinement, and suddenly a note came under the door. I opened it slowly, almost like the prison thing, escape. Yeah. And there it was, actors, black and white, marching at Times Square with huge placards, free John Gani, free Winston John, against apartheid. My Lord, that night, for the first time, I fell asleep. For the first time in 20 days, because I knew now they cannot kill me. Now the words, no, they have me. That was a continuation of that collaboration between the African American community, the American community at large, the UK, Europe, Australia, because people like even in France, Peter Brook was protesting very strongly, getting the French government to do something about it. That you knew. And that was why this cross-Atlantic relationship, because America for us is the largest second home of Africans in the world.
Right.
So we knew that. So when you see this, another page, I looked at the back, it was now in London, in front of South Africa House, in Trafalgar Square. And there were these people chanting, free John Gani, free John Gani, free Winston John. I was moved, but I knew I'm part of a much bigger movement, the movement for reclaiming humanity, reclaiming the dignity of human beings, reclaiming the God-given right of freedom.
That's right.
To think, to speak, to act, to prosper. And we've always used the United States African American as a yardstick of measuring our progress. Sometimes you let us down because we'll learn that you've done things that we've not done during apartheid. We get so disappointed. Says, come on, guys, come on. If you succeed, we succeed. You know, and those are the things that have been, for me, the greatest relationship. When I was in Ghana 2 years ago, in Accra, there was a ceremony. They were celebrating 400 years of the first shipment of enslaved people. Please remember, enslaved. We were never slaves. We cannot use that term as a noun that describes us. We were never slaves. We were enslaved. So we reopened that door. They left through, jumping on Dakar and Goree into broken limbs into a ship. It's now so the spirits can come back home. So this with this Haksa, which means our communication can continue, and heal ourselves. So that has been my calling, really. Although I use the stage, the writing, the film, the theater, wherever I am, the work is chosen to further enhance the struggle for complete dignity of the African.
And it permeates through and through every project that you're in, whether it's stage or it's TV or it's film. It just resonates and permeates through. So I love when you talk about that. Let's go back to your acting for a second. What has been your most significant role to date?
Well, they've all been significant.
Okay. All right.
They've all been, really, because, there are things I did just to keep the wolf off the door. And I knew that, well, I don't know what this means, but I'm having a hell of a good time and I'm paid bloody well.
Okay.
But whenever I get the opportunity, but I'm going to say in 1987, for some reason, a director decided we should do Othello. Now, there's a perception that Shakespeare's classics are for a particular people within the arts community.
Right.
Black people should do protest, should do things about their struggle with slavery. They should sing their Mahalia Jackson, Negro spirituals. But when we step our foot across to where it's sort of a private corporation, a CC, in South Africa, no one ever had played Othello. It was always being played by white actors with black makeup on their faces. And I had just been arrested in 1985 for doing Miss Julie by August Steinberg for kissing the madam on stage. So I knew that I was in trouble, but I knew this was one of the greatest challenges for me as an actor. Because sometimes we put so much extra responsibility to Black artists, music, art, performance, anything. If you fail, then a whole generation behind you is going to fail. If
Yeah.
you don't make it, it's going to mean the doors will shut. If you make it, you would have opened the doors for the younger generation or any other person to walk in. And therefore, you have to succeed. And thus, we performed Othello at the Market Theatre. Even the cast, all white. They were asked, hey, what are you doing, guys? They said, we're doing Othello
Yeah.
at the Market Theatre. Oh, who's playing Iago? Oh, Richard Haynes is playing Iago. Who's playing Othello? The Market Theatre wants John Kanye to play Othello. They didn't say, well, John Kanye is playing Othello.
Yeah.
They would say, no, the management wants John Kanye to play Othello, which then made it like a political strategy of the management to use me in this production. That was most challenging because it was double-edged. It was the fact that I enjoyed the challenge of cracking this great role.
Yes.
And where I felt even Shakespeare was unfair in the duel between Iago and Othello by limiting Othello's voice
Yeah.
and giving 3/4 of the play to Iago. So your presence, you would to ooze out of every pore of your face and your body to say, this is my story.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I'm not going to mention Caesar Banzi is Dead and The Island, for which both Winston and I won the Tony Award for Best Actor on Broadway.
Right.
Well, I didn't even know what the hell that meant.
It was a
You
big
know,
deal. I mean, that's
I didn't know that.
that's a career changing moment. So I'm sure that the reverb of that was felt way later. Dr. Kanye, I want to go back to something you mentioned while we were talking about your most significant role. You talk about this pressure that we put on Black artists, right? That you are bearing the brunt of this responsibility. And in a way, I look at the new South African actors that are out right now, whether it's Nomzamo in Coming to America or Tusombedu, who is in Underground Railroad, who, by the way, has a crazy buzz around her right now. In a way, I feel like you paved the way for them, coming here, winning that Tony Award, performing on stages, performing on all these different plays. How does it feel for you to see them have this amazing success, this new generation of actors? And what message do you have for them?
When I look at my children, I ask for one thing, that they make a success of their lives in whatever choices they make, and that they are responsible for those choices. And that if they succeed, I usually say to them, I sent you to school and universities and I want my money back. You have to pay me back.
That's right.
In South Africa, it's now called black tax.
Yes.
It's called the black tax, where children are expected to look after the parents because they sent them to school. And I'll say to my children, I want my money back. But if you make yourself useful, if you make your life better, if you contribute towards the advancement of humanity, you've paid me back. That's the currency I'm looking at. When I look, for instance, at young Tusum Bedi and Nomzamo Mbata, when I look at Trevor Noah, we are citizens of this globe. We are not confined by the geographical area where our umbilical cord was dropped. We are citizens of the world. We should not even be saying so-and-so is successful in London, so-and-so is successful in America. Then we're successful everywhere we are. But I feel that the younger generations are saying what we felt in our hearts, that this is not just me, it's for everybody. When you see a young musician make it in London, I think of Miriam Makeba, I think of Hugh Masekela, of Kaifa Semenya, Letambulu. I think of those people who walked ahead of us. And that's why when they succeed, then it means we've done a little bit of work in just removing some of the obstacles in that tiny footpath. It's not yet a freeway.
Right.
We want a freeway, that tiny footpath that opens it for Africa. I mean, when I'm recognized by Ouagadougou in Burkina Faso for the contribution to the African film industry and being given the Sembene Osman Award, who's from Senegal, the greatest filmmaker that Africa has ever known, on par with Cecil B. DeMille, on par with Alfred Hitchcock, on par with great George Lucas. But we don't know him. But as Africans, we know him. To be recognized with an award in his name, it means that we're opening up. I want you to move in, not to be looking for doors, because I've kicked them down.
That is so right. You have kicked them down and you have opened the way and paved the way for them. And you know, you talk about when we see them, we all feel like we're winning, right? When you see Tusa, when you see Nomzamo, when you see Trevor, it feels like, because we're being seen. And I felt that. I remember the first time I watched Black Panther and I heard them speak Xhosa. Now, I'm not fluent, full disclosure, in Xhosa, okay? I'm a Ndebele girl, Nyakuluma, and Ditet. But I felt seen when I saw that. And I love how you use language, whether it's in a Marvel Studios film or it's on stage in Kundene and the King, and you're reciting Shakespeare in Xhosa. Let's talk about the importance of language and capturing our history. Why is that so important to you?
Language is the most powerful tool we have to communicate.
Yeah.
But it is also the most dangerous tool available to us to destroy each other. There's one thing that we've never been given, which I wish we had, to be able to think before it falls out of your mouth and be able to censor it. But sometimes, even in ordinary family relationships, you find yourself having said something that will take years to heal. Therefore, when we use language, we must be aware of the power we have. And I always say, as an actor, on stage, television, and a film, I have the privilege of I'm addressing the nation. Because on the radio, on the television, on every evening, people are coming to hear you say something. They are hungry for something they could take home. Of course, it could be a pantomime. Of course, it could be No, No, Nanette. Of course, it could be the most hilarious comedy. But it served an incredible purpose of taking you out for 1 hour, 30 minutes and just deal with the story as it unfolds and allow it to enrich and warm your soul. I remember when Lloyd Richards, he was directing Fences on Broadway. And as he was approaching the theater of August Wilson, and there was an old lady from Harlem, do some shopping, but she still had the paper bags, but she was buying a ticket to see the matinee. And Lloyd Richards asked her, "Mom, you want to see the play? Why are you here?" And she said, "Someone told me that something is going on in this hall that concerns me." That is what art is about. That is what words do. They nourish. They make you grow. But they are an incredible responsibility for those who uses them. Therefore, within the struggle of all our struggles in the world, it is important that we understand the power of the word.
Right.
It strikes you when I read the script, I'm looking for one word, that the writer, because I, as the writer, know why I wrote the play. Know why I wrote the screenplay. I know why I wrote this poem. I know why I wrote this song. So as I hear the song from Lady Gaga, as I hear the song from Beyonce, I'm looking for that one word, that one little phrase that connects with me, that she was aware that if this could go through, could come over to an audience, I would have served my song would have served my purpose.
Amen.
And I find it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I look at the painting on the wall and I can't find it. Sometimes I look at the painting on the wall and I think it's speaking to me.
Right.
I don't know what it is about, but it's speaking to me. That's the word.
And that's the magic, right? That's the magic of arts, is that it takes you to a whole different level. And more so this year, we've needed the arts as that form of escapism. Listen, Dr. Kanye, we are running a little long. I know the organizers are probably behind the scenes like, wrap it up. And if you are just now tuning in, we're almost towards the end of our conversation. And we are live on the Shared Interest Facebook page and also on YouTube. And we're so excited for the gala that's coming up in June in just a few days. And you're joining us, Dr. Kanye. How are you feeling about being a part of our gala this year?
Absolutely moved, honored, humbled. It is a great effort It is a journey that we all have to understand that we have that responsibility. And I'm saying to all the artists out there, to all the fathers and the mothers, especially the elders, this too shall pass. We're not out yet. We still can beat this one, including COVID-19, including ignorance, including racism, including gender-based violence. All these things we can defeat and create this wonderful utopia of a human being focused, centered
Yeah.
society.
Yeah, that's such an inspirational message that we need as we're still going through this pandemic. And guys, I hope you will join us, ladies and gentlemen, at this gala. It is happening on Tuesday, I believe. You can go to sharedinterest.com to find out more information on our Facebook page, on our YouTube page, on our Instagram. Please follow us and make sure that you are a part of the gala that is coming up. Dr. Kanye, it has been a pleasure. We are up
Me
at time.
too.
I could talk to you for hours and hours, but I do have to ask you one last question as we sort of wrap this up. When you look at the journey that you've been on, I mean, and just reading and researching about you, there's so much more that we could have talked about because we just don't have the time. How do you take a measure of this incredible journey as an actor, a playwright, an activist, right? How do you take a measure of this incredible journey that you've been on?
I do not take myself very serious. I live my life with every day, each challenge, every time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping, not working for a legacy, working for a tiny impact on an individual. If I could just make one person think I'm worth something, I'm not giving up my dream, that would have been an incredible achievement for my life and the journey that I have traveled for over 50 years now on stage and in film. It's just that I'd love someone to say, I get so brilliantly moved when someone says to me, I was at Yale and my teacher said, we have a guest, and he walked in 1974. And that changed my life. That's all I am for.
Yeah. Well, you've changed our lives. You've made our lives better. You've enriched them. Let me give you your flowers right now. One day I'll be able to give them to you in person, but I'll give them to you virtually. Dr. Kanye, thank you so much for this chat. Thank you for joining us today. And thank you, everyone who's been in the comments, who's been contributing. We hope to see you on Tuesday, June 15th from 7 to 8 p.m. We will be broadcasting live on Facebook and YouTube. So we'll see you guys really, really soon. Dr. Kanye, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Nyabonga.
Thank you, Kubonga. I will hand the flowers to my wife virtually too.
Please, please, do it. All right, everybody.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you soon. Bye.